Now joined by John Lott. He's the president of Crime Prevention Research Center. John, appreciate your time on this today.
Thanks.
All right, for more on this, I'm now joined by John Lott. He's the president of Crime Prevention Research Center. John, appreciate your time on this today.
Thanks.
Walk us. Yeah, a very devastating situation right now. We're getting sort of information slowly coming in terms of what has happened here. What is your reaction to what you're seeing and hearing? We've got reports of, several people in hospital, perhaps 18 have been shot. We've also heard that there may be about 3 people in custody. The police saying that this is, the area has been contained, but still referring to this as an active situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's another horrible tragedy. If it's 3 people, if it turns out to be correct, that will be very unusual. I mean, there's a few cases where you have 2 people doing the attack, but 3 people, at least in the United States, has been relatively rare. And, we're still getting information on this. One of the things that we do know is that unfortunately, this was yet another place where people were banned from being able to have guns for protection. Whether it was the recent shooting that we had in California or the Virginia Beach attack, time after time, these killers, they may be crazy, but they're not stupid. They pick out those tiny areas where permanent concealed handguns are banned to go and do their attack, because they know if they go to a place where people aren't allowed to go and protect themselves, they're going to be able to go and kill more people.
Right.
And you simply can't have enough police around. We have 600,000 police in the United States. Maybe at peak hours you may have 300,000 on duty, but it's going to be less than that most of the time. And to go and cover a country of 300 and almost 30 million people, it's simply impossible for them to go and cover all the targets. Plus, even if you do have a police officer, it's an incredibly difficult job. Having somebody in uniform, if an attack's going to occur, is kind of like somebody having a neon sign above them saying, "Shoot me first."
And of course, now strong calls we anticipate will be coming again, John, to say something needs to be done about gun violence in the United States.
Well, I agree. For 20 years, I've been talking about something needs to be done with my research. And what you find is that virtually all these attacks, almost all these attacks keep on occurring in places where guns are banned. So in Texas, you can carry your permanent concealed handgun probably in 98% of the state. Why is it, if these attacks were random, then 98% of the mass public shootings should be taking place in areas where people are allowed to defend themselves. And yet we keep on seeing these attacks occurring in those tiny areas where people are banned from being able to go and protect themselves. You have stories like the Virginia Beach attack that we just had,
right,
where a woman named Kate Nixon, whose death probably got more news coverage than anybody else's because she was an incredible volunteer in the community, helped out. People talked constantly about how she would do anything to help people. Well, she had complained about the person who ended up doing the killing. The employers didn't do anything. The night before the attack, she had gone home, talked to her family about it, and talked to her husband about whether she should take her permanent concealed handgun with her to work. She finally
John, I'm just going to stop you there. If I could just stop you there for a second, John. We're getting an update from police. Can I have you stand by? Because we'd like to come back to you. Just hold on a second there, John. Let's listen into what police are saying. All right. We were just listening in there to El Paso Police. John Lott, president of Crime Prevention Research Center, is still with me. So, John, you were listening in on all of that information that's coming in. Recapping here, 1 person in custody. They've confirmed that this is a male individual. They've also mentioned they had 1 person detained, but police not ruling out that there could be multiple suspects. And again, he's saying this is a very active and fluid investigation. And you heard there, John, initial reports referring to a rifle that was used. We don't have confirmed of fatalities, but certainly confirmation of casualties. And we're going to wait to hear on conditions there. And of course, the FBI and all law enforcement agencies in El Paso are involved in this. So your take on what you're hearing here, John?
Well, I mean, so far, if there's one individual that's there, that's pretty much the typical case. If you're talking about the type of weapon that was used, in over half the mass public shootings over the last 2 decades in the United States, over half involved just handguns. Only 13% involved just rifles of any type. You have 80% involve handguns, either solely or with other weapons. So, the type of weapon here appears to be at least a little bit unusual, though those often get the most coverage, simply because of the notion of assault weapons.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. And of course, the police saying that we were talking about a large area here. We know approximately, I think just in the Walmart alone, 200 people were very quickly evacuated. And we were listening to a witness earlier. There was a witness earlier that I was listening to that spoke about what she heard, a lot of loud gunshots. They were trying to get people out as quickly as possible. Talk to me a little bit, John, about the targets. The area that an individual like this comes into, and as you say, an area that is vulnerable, where they can cause maximum damage.
Right. Well, I mean, they want to go to crowded places. They want to go to places where people are defenseless and not able to go and protect themselves. What seems to be a little unusual so far is that this killer has been taken into custody. If you look at the shootings over the last 2 decades, about 80% of the time, these killers die at the scene. And in the 20% where they don't die at the scene, they planned on committing suicide, but just couldn't usually bring themselves to actually do that at this moment. These are people who want to get media attention. They want to commit suicide, but they want to try to do so in a way that's going to get them attention. So you look at something like the Sandy Hook killer. He wrote, according to police, what amounted to a doctoral dissertation where he had studied mass public shootings over the previous 40 years. And it even people killed in attacks and the amount of worldwide news coverage it would get. Basically proving to himself that the more people he could kill, the more worldwide coverage. And according to police, he wanted to go and kill more people than the Norway killer, who had killed 67 people, ignoring the bombing deaths that were there, because he wanted to get more international news coverage than the Norway killer had got. And so, the question that you have to face in dealing with these things is, how can you quickly stop these attacks? And as we were talking about earlier, police have a very difficult job in doing these. If you have somebody in uniform there, these killers have a huge strategic advantage. If they see an officer, they can decide not to attack there, or if they decide that they're going to attack, the first person that's killed is going to be the officer. Because if it's in a place where guns are banned and they kill the officer first, then they know that they essentially have free reign to go and kill other people. And so the question is, how do you take away that strategic advantage? And unfortunately, just like the Gilroy shooting, the Gilroy shooting, you had metal detectors, a person cut through a fence at the back of the grounds there, because guns were banned in the area. You look at the Virginia Beach attack that we just had a little bit earlier. Virginia Beach was one of those municipalities that banned employees from having concealed handguns. The attacker even went into an area where an employee key card was necessary in order to enter to do the attack. So, these people plan these attacks well in advance. 6 months is actually a short period of time for planning. Somebody like the Sandy Hook killer was planning his attack 2.5 years prior to the attack. And so, the notion that you're going to be able to keep guns out of an area You know, just like the Gilroy shooter, he found a way in. You look at the Aurora Batman movie theater shooter. Guns were banned there. They had checks at the front to determine whether somebody may have weapons. They even checked, but the person was able to bring in a gun through a back door at the movie theater.
So, John, what needs to be done? What needs to be done to get people to be safe again?
Well, I think what we need to do is to get rid of these gun-free zones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's at some point we have, 95% of these mass public shootings in the United States over the last, since 1950, have taken place in those areas where we've banned guns. Now, I understand the desire. You say, well, if I merely ban guns from an area, that will make people safer. The problem is that the people who obey these rules are the law-abiding good citizens, not the killers. And these places serve as magnets for these attacks. I mean, if you were being stalked or threatened, would you feel safer putting a sign in front of your home that said this home is a gun-free zone? Would that cause somebody who wanted to use a gun to attack you to say, well, I can't take my gun in there, so I won't attack the person?
Well, it will be and continue to be an ongoing debate over, what is the best thing to do. But certainly you and I are here talking about another tragedy
Right.
involving so many people and affecting so many people. John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this breaking news story. We appreciate your thoughts and insights.
I appreciate you being there. Thank you.